The sound wasn't a scream.
Stop! You're
It
hurting
was a
me!
snap. A sickening, dry crack that echoed through the first-class cabin of Jetstream 447 like a gunshot, and 12-year-old Zanelle King's scream shattered the peaceful hum of pre-flight preparations. Her arm hung at an impossible angle, bone protruding beneath the skin, while Chief Purser Ilara released her grip and stepped back, eyes wide but jaw locked in defiance. "You broke her arm!" A woman in seat 2A lunged forward, her diamond bracelet catching the overhead lights as she reached for Zainel. "Someone call security. This woman assaulted a child." But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind 30 minutes. Zainel had boarded Flight 447 to London with her heart hammering against her ribs and her father's words echoing in her mind. "You're a king. You belong anywhere you choose to be." The denim backpack with its small jet insignia, a birthday gift from Dad, pressed against her shoulders as she navigated the jetway, clutching her boarding pass like a golden ticket. Seat 1A, first class, her first solo flight, her first real adventure, her first chance to prove she was brave enough to cross an ocean alone. The cabin smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Passengers settled into seats that looked more like recliners, accepting champagne and warm towels from smiling flight attendants. Zanelle found 1A and slid into the window seat, pressing her forehead against the cool glass to watch the ground crew loading luggage below. London waited on the other side of the Atlantic, where her father would be finishing his rotation as a senior Jetstream Airlines captain. "First time in first class?" The woman beside her smiled warmly. "Yes, ma'am. My dad surprised me with the upgrade." Zanelle couldn't contain her grin. "Well, congratulations, sweetheart. You're going to love it." For 20 blissful minutes, Zainel existed in a bubble of excitement. She explored the amenity kit, marveled at the menu selections, and texted her mother a photo of the seat. Everything felt magical, untouchable, perfect. Then Ilara appeared. The chief purser moved through the cabin with predatory grace, her severe features set in an expression of perpetual disapproval. She'd worked for Jetstream Airlines for 15 years, watching the company prioritize profit over protocol, cutting corners on safety while expanding premium cabins. She'd seen entitled passengers abuse her staff, watched management protect wealthy, frequent flyers who harassed crew members, and somewhere along the way, bitterness had calcified into cruelty. When her eyes landed on Zainel, this child in a simple cotton dress and worn sneakers, clearly out of place among the business travelers and wealthy tourists, something dark flickered across her face. "Excuse me." Ilara's voice could freeze water. "You're in the wrong seat." Zanelle looked up, confusion clouding her features. "Ma'am, this is first class. Economy is in the back." Ilara gestured toward the rear of the aircraft with one manicured nail. "No, ma'am, this is my seat." Zanelle held up her boarding pass with trembling fingers. "See? Seat 1A." Ilara didn't even glance at it. "There's been a mistake. You need to move immediately." "But my dad, I don't care who your father is. You don't belong here." The words landed like a physical blow. Zanelle felt her cheeks burn, felt the eyes of other passengers turning toward them, felt the magical bubble burst and shatter around her feet. "Let me see the boarding pass." Ilara snatched it from Zainel's hand, studied it for a fraction of a second, then crumpled it slightly. "This is fraudulent. Did you print this yourself? Steal someone's confirmation number?" "What? No, my dad bought—" "Stop lying." Ilara's tone shifted from cold to menacing. "I'm giving you one chance to move voluntarily before I have you removed from this aircraft." The woman in 2A leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Hold on just a minute. I watched this child board properly. She has a valid ticket. What exactly are you accusing her of?" Ilara's smile was venomous. "Ma'am, with all due respect, airline security is my responsibility. Please don't interfere." "Interfere? You're harassing a passenger." "A suspicious passenger who clearly obtained this seat through fraudulent means." Zanelle's throat constricted. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Her father's face flashed through her mind, his steady gaze, his confident stance, the way he commanded respect without demanding it. What would he do? "I'd like to speak to the captain," Zanel said quietly, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "My father is Captain Ryland King. He's deadheading on this flight. He can verify my ticket." Something flickered in Ilara's expression, surprise, perhaps, or calculation. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Nice try. I'm not falling for that obvious bluff." "It's not a bluff. He's probably in the cockpit right now. Just call enough." Ilara grabbed Zanel's wrist. "You're coming with me. Now. Get your hands off me." Zanel tried to pull away, but Ilara's grip tightened. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting. You're hurting me." Tara, a junior flight attendant who'd been watching from the galley, rushed forward. "Ilara, maybe we should just verify the ticket with the gate agent. Stay out of this, Tara. She's a stowaway, and I'm handling it." "Please," Zanel's voice cracked. "Just let me call my dad." Ilara yanked harder, trying to haul Zainel from the seat. Zainel's feet tangled in her backpack strap. She pitched forward, off balance, and Ilara twisted her arm backward to maintain
Stop! You're hurting
control.
me!
The bone gave way with a sickening crack that reverberated through the cabin like thunder. Zanel's scream was immediate, visceral, a sound that seemed torn from the deepest part of her soul. Her arm bent at an unnatural angle, and a fragment of bone pressed against the skin, creating a grotesque bulge that made several passengers gasp and look away. Ilara released her immediately, stumbling backward. She pulled away. "This is her fault. She shouldn't have resisted." "You monster!" The woman in 2A was out of her seat now, positioning herself between Ilara and Zainel. "Everyone saw what you did?" A man in seat 3B held up his phone, his face pale but determined. "I recorded everything, the whole thing, how you grabbed her, how you twisted her arm. This is assault. Put that away." Ilara's composure cracked. "Recording crew members is against what? Against the law that protects you from accountability?" The man's voice rose. "I'm a lawyer, and I'm telling you right now, you're finished." Zainel couldn't hear them, couldn't process anything beyond the white-hot agony radiating from her arm. She cradled it against her chest, rocking back and forth, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. The pain was a living thing, consuming her, drowning her, pulling her under waves of nausea and shock. "Before we continue, let me ask you a question. If you were the woman in seat 2A or the man in 3B, what would you have done differently at that moment? Tell us where in the world you are watching from. Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel, and hit that subscribe button if you've been hooked so far. Now let's continue." Tara dropped to her knees beside Zanel's seat, her hands hovering uselessly. "Sweetie, don't move. Please don't move. We're getting help." "It hurts," Zanel whimpered. "It hurts so much." "I know, honey. I know. Can you tell me your dad's name again?" "Captain Ryland King." The words came out broken, punctuated by sobs. "He's supposed to be in the cockpit. Please get my dad. Please." Tara's face went ashen. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, nearly dropping it twice before managing to dial. The call connected after 2 rings. "Captain King, this is Tara Martinez from the cabin crew. Sir, you need to come to first class immediately. There's been an incident with your daughter." In the cockpit, Ryland King felt his blood turn to ice. "What kind of incident?" "Sir, she's injured. It's serious. Please hurry." Ryland was already moving, ripping off his headset and bolting from his seat. The first officer called after him, confused, but Ryland didn't stop. He burst through the cockpit door and sprinted down the connector, his mind racing through terrible possibilities. A medical emergency? Or allergic reaction? Had she fallen? Nothing prepared him for what he found. The first-class cabin looked like a crime scene. Passengers stood in clusters, some filming on their phones, others comforting each other with pale faces. And there, in seat 1A, was his daughter, his brave, brilliant daughter who'd been so excited about this trip, curled into herself, cradling her arm while tears streamed down her face. "Zinel!" Ryland shoved past the gathered crowd, his captain's uniform giving him authority that no one dared challenge. He dropped to his knees beside her seat, his large hands hovering over her small frame, terrified to touch her and cause more pain. "Baby, what happened?" "Dad." The word came out as a sob, and Zinel reached for him with her good arm. "Dad, it hurts. It hurts so bad." Ryland's gaze swept over her injury, and his stomach lurched. 15 years of emergency training kicked in automatically. Assess the damage, stabilize, get medical help. But the clinical checklist warred with the primal terror of seeing his child in agony. "Okay, sweetheart, I've got you. I'm right here." He looked up at Tara, his voice dropping into the authoritative tone he used during emergencies. "Get the medical kit, now, and I want paramedics waiting at the gate." "Sir, we're about to push back. We're cleared for—" "I don't care if we're cleared for the damn moon. This plane doesn't move until my daughter gets medical attention." Ryland stood, his 6-foot frame radiating fury. "Who did this?" The cabin went silent. Ilara, who'd been standing near the galley with her arms crossed, straightened her spine. "Captain King, there was a situation with a passenger who didn't belong in first class. She became combative when I tried to—" "Combative?" Ryland's voice could have stripped paint. "She's 12 years old. I was doing my job. She had a fraudulent boarding pass and refused to comply with crew instructions." "That's a lie." The woman from 2A stepped forward. "I watched the whole thing. Your crew member attacked her for no reason. This child was sitting peacefully in her assigned seat." "I have video." The lawyer in 3B held up his phone again. "Time-stamped, high-definition video of everything. Would you like to see what actually happened, Captain?" Ryland's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Play it." The lawyer tapped his screen, and the video began. Even on the small display, the footage was damning. Ilara approaching Zinel with hostility. Zinel holding up her boarding pass. Ilara refusing to look at it, making accusations. Then the grab, the yank, the twist, and finally the terrible sound of bone breaking, followed by Zinel's scream. Ryland watched it once, then twice, his hands curled into fists at his sides, every muscle in his body coiled tight. When he looked at Ilara again, his eyes were glacial. "You're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you off this aircraft." "You can't do that." Ilara's voice wavered for the first time. "You're not the captain of this flight." "No, but I'm a senior captain with this airline, and I'm declaring this an unsafe working environment due to crew misconduct. That gives me authority to remove any crew member I deem a threat to passenger safety." Ryland turned to Tara. "Call airport security. Tell them we need police and paramedics." "Captain King, let's not be hasty." Ilara's demeanor shifted, her voice taking on a placating tone. "Obviously there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps if we just—" "A misunderstanding?" Ryland stepped closer to her, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You broke my daughter's arm. You assaulted a child in your care. There's no misunderstanding here. She was in a seat she didn't belong in." "She was in her assigned seat with a valid ticket that I purchased." Ryland pulled out his phone, pulling up his Jetstream Airlines app. "Here, confirmation number, seat assignment, payment receipt. Everything you would have seen if you'd bothered to actually check instead of making assumptions." Ilara's face flushed crimson. Around them, passengers murmured and shifted, the atmosphere thick with tension and anger. A businessman in seat 4A spoke up. "I'm calling my lawyer. I was traumatized by what I witnessed. If Jetstream Airlines employs people like this, I want compensation." "I'm filing a complaint with the FAA." Someone else chimed in. I'm posting this on social media. Everyone needs to know what kind of airline this is." The situation spiraled rapidly. Passengers pulled out phones, typing furiously or making calls. The video from seat 3B was already being airdropped to others in the cabin, shared and forwarded before Ryland could even think about damage control. Tara returned, her face grave. "Captain, I've contacted security and medical. They're on their way to the gate. But, sir, the gate supervisor says we need to push back or we'll lose our departure slot." Ryland looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "Tell the gate supervisor that we're not going anywhere. Tell them we have an injured minor and a crew member who committed assault. Tell them that if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with the FAA, the police, and every news organization that's about to descend on this airport." The gate supervisor's response came through Tara's radio, tinny and bureaucratic. "Captain King, corporate is advising that we can provide medical attention upon landing in London. Delaying departure will cost the airline thousands in—" Ryland grabbed the radio from Tara's hand. "This is Captain Ryland King, employee number 47293. Let me be crystal clear. My daughter has a compound fracture that requires immediate medical intervention. If anyone from corporate suggests we prioritize a departure slot over a child's welfare, I will personally ensure that conversation becomes Exhibit A in the lawsuit that's about to bankrupt this airline. Am I understood?" Static crackled. Then a different voice, older and more cautious. "Captain King, this is Station Manager Hendricks. Paramedics are en route to the gate. We're recalling the jetway now." "Thank you." Ryland handed the radio back to Tara, then returned to Zainel, who had gone worryingly quiet. Her face was chalk white, her lips tinged with blue. Shock was setting in. "Baby, stay with me." Ryland carefully positioned himself beside her, supporting her injured arm without touching it. "Help is coming. Just a few more minutes." "I didn't do anything wrong," Zainel whispered, her voice small and broken. "I showed her my ticket. I tried to explain." "I know, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. She said I didn't belong here." Tears spilled down Zainel's cheeks again. She said I was lying. She grabbed me and wouldn't let go, and I just wanted her to stop, and then— "Shh, don't think about it right now. Just focus on breathing." The woman from 2A knelt on Zainel's other side, her expensive silk scarf now draped gently over Zainel's shoulders. "You are so brave, honey, so incredibly brave, and you do belong here. You belong anywhere you want to be." Airport security arrived first, 2 officers who took one look at Zainel's arm and immediately called for the paramedics to expedite. They pulled Alara aside for questioning, and Ryland watched with grim satisfaction as she gestured defensively, her earlier confidence evaporating under official scrutiny. The paramedics rushed through the cabin door moments later, their equipment clattering. A woman with kind eyes and steady hands assessed Zainel's injury, while her partner prepared a splint and pain medication. "Okay, sweetheart, I'm going to give you something for the pain. You'll feel a small pinch." The paramedic inserted an IV with practiced efficiency, and within seconds, Zainel's rigid posture began to soften as the medication took effect. "That's better, isn't it?" The paramedic smiled at her while carefully immobilizing the arm. "You're being so strong. I'm going to stabilize this, and then we're going to take you to the hospital where the doctors can fix you right up." Ryland held Zainel's good hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "I'm coming with you." "Sir, are you family?" the paramedic asked. "I'm her father." "Then absolutely. Let's get her on the stretcher." As they prepared to move Zainel, the lawyer from 3B approached Ryland, extending a business card. "Harlan Mitchell, civil rights attorney. I've already forwarded the video to my office. If you need representation, call me, no charge." Ryland pocketed the card. "Thank you. That woman should be in handcuffs," Harlan said quietly. "What I witnessed was assault, pure and simple, and the way she profiled your daughter—" He shook his head. "Jetstream needs to answer for this. The words settled in Ryland's chest like stones. Profiled. He'd wanted to believe Alara's actions were just incompetence, just a power-hungry crew member on a bad day. But watching that video, seeing the way Alara had looked at Zainel, the immediate assumption that she didn't belong, the refusal to even glance at a valid boarding pass, he couldn't deny the ugly truth beneath it all. As they wheeled Zainel toward the exit, she turned her head to look at the first-class cabin one last time. The plush seat that had represented adventure and possibility now felt like a crime scene. The other passengers watched her go, their faces etched with sympathy and outrage. "I'm sorry I ruined your flight," Zainel murmured to her father. Ryland's heart cracked. "You didn't ruin anything, baby. You did nothing wrong." Nothing. The emergency room at Denver Memorial was organized chaos. Doctors and nurses moved with purposeful urgency as Zainel was taken for X-rays, her small form swallowed by the massive imaging equipment. Ryland paced the waiting room, his uniform drawing curious glances from other patients and staff. His phone buzzed constantly, texts from Zainel's mother, voicemails from Jetstream management, notifications from his union representative. He ignored them all until a number he didn't recognize appeared on the screen. Against his better judgment, he answered, "Captain King, this is Sage Riker, CEO of Jetstream Airlines." The voice was smooth, practiced, the kind that had been coached by expensive PR consultants. "I've been briefed on the incident involving your daughter. First, let me express my deepest concern for her well-being. How is she?" "She has a compound fracture of her radius. She's in surgery." Ryland's voice was flat, emotionless. "Why are you calling?" "I wanted to reach out personally to assure you that we're taking this matter very seriously. We've launched an internal investigation, and the crew member in question has been placed on administrative leave pending—" "Administrative leave?" Ryland's voice rose, drawing stares from across the waiting room. "She assaulted my daughter. She should be arrested." "The police are handling that side of things. On our end, I want you to know that Jetstream stands behind you and your family during this difficult time. We'll cover all medical expenses, of course, and we're prepared to offer additional compensation for—" "I don't want your compensation. I want accountability." A pause. When Riker spoke again, his tone had cooled slightly. "Captain King, I understand you're upset. As a father myself, I can't imagine what you're going through. But let's not make rash decisions in the heat of the moment. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting once things have calmed down, discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" Ryland laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "My 12-year-old daughter was brutalized by one of your employees. There's nothing rational about that. With respect, Captain, incidents like this are unfortunate but complex. Crew members make thousands of judgment calls every day, and sometimes mistakes happen. That doesn't mean this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Your chief purser chose to grab a child, chose to ignore a valid ticket, chose to use force, and now you're calling me with damage control talking points?" Ryland's hand tightened around the phone. "Let me tell you what's going to happen, Mr. Riker. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of airline you run. Every pilot, every passenger, every regulator who'll listen. Because if this happened to my daughter, how many other passengers have been harassed, intimidated, or assaulted by your crew? Captain King, I strongly advise you not to make threats. You're still an employee of Jetstream, and there are consequences. Are you threatening me?" Ryland's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Because I have 15 years of exemplary service records. I have a union that will back me to the hilt, and I have a lawyer who just offered to represent me pro bono because what he witnessed was so appalling that he felt morally obligated to help her. So please, tell me about the consequences." Another pause, longer this time. "We'll speak again when you've had time to process. Give your daughter my best wishes for a speedy recovery." The line went dead. Ryland stared at his phone, rage and disbelief warring in his chest. They were already trying to control the narrative, to minimize and deflect. He'd seen it before, Corporate machines grinding away at truth until all that remained was plausible deniability and carefully crafted statements. Not this time. Ryland's declaration left no room for doubt. The safety of his daughter came first. Imagine the courage it takes to stand up in a moment like that. But how many others do you think would have backed down? If you're moved by this father's determination to put family over everything else, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments. This story's just getting started, and we've got more coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed. Now, let's continue. Ryland scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he wanted. Marcus Chen, president of the Jetstream Pilots Union. They'd flown together years ago, had maintained a friendship built on mutual respect and shared frustration with management's cost-cutting measures. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Ryland, I heard something happened. Are you okay? I need the union's legal team, and I need you to pull the safety records for Jetstream's cabin crew training program." "What's going on?" Ryland told him everything. The assault, the injury, the CEO's phone call. When he finished, Marcus was silent for a long moment. "They're going to fight this," Marcus finally said. "Corporate will throw money at lawyers, tie you up in depositions and arbitration for years. I don't care how long it takes." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Then you've got the full weight of the union behind you. I'll have our attorneys contact you within the hour. And Ryland, I'm sorry this happened to Zainel. She deserves better. You both do." After they hung up, Ryland sank into a plastic waiting room chair and finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had occurred. His hands trembled as he pulled up his photos, scrolling to the picture Zainel had sent him that morning. Her grinning face, eyes bright with excitement, holding up her boarding pass like a trophy. That joy had been stolen from her in the span of minutes, replaced by trauma that would follow her for years. A surgeon emerged through the double doors, still wearing scrubs. "Mr. King," Ryland shot to his feet. "How is she?" "The surgery went well. We've set the bone and inserted a small plate to ensure proper healing. She'll need physical therapy, and there will be scarring, but she should regain full function of the arm." The surgeon's expression softened. "She's a tough kid. Asked about you the moment she woke up from anesthesia. Can I see her?" "Follow me." Zainel looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her arm encased in a cast that stretched from her hand to above her elbow. The medication had left her drowsy, but her eyes focused when Ryland entered the room. "Hey, Dad." Her voice was hoarse from the breathing tube. "Hey, baby." Ryland pulled a chair close and took her good hand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired and sore, but better than before." She studied his face, reading the tension there. "You look angrier than I've ever seen you." "I'm not angry at you." "I know, you're angry at her, at the airline." Zainel's eyes welled up. "Dad, did I do something wrong? Was there something I should have said or done differently?" The question gutted him. "No, absolutely not. You handled yourself perfectly. You were polite, you showed your ticket, you tried to de-escalate. Everything you did was right. What happened was not your fault." "Then why did she hate me so much?" The tears spilled over. I could see it in her eyes. Like I was dirt. Like I wasn't even human. Ryland wanted to protect her from this conversation, to shield her from the ugliness of the world. But Zainel deserved honesty. Some people make judgments based on how someone looks, what they're wearing, the color of their skin. They see someone they think doesn't fit their expectations, and they react with cruelty. It's wrong, it's unforgivable. But it happens. "Because I'm black." The words hung in the air between them. Ryland had known this conversation would come eventually, had prepared himself for it, but nothing could have prepared him for having it in a hospital room while his daughter recovered from an assault. "I can't know what was in Ilara's heart," he said carefully. "But I saw how she looked at you, how she refused to believe your ticket was valid, how she assumed you didn't belong. Those are the actions of someone carrying prejudice. And yes, sweetheart, being black in spaces where people don't expect to see you can make you a target." Zinel was quiet for a moment, processing. What happens now? Now we fight back. We make sure this never happens to another kid. How? However we need to. Legal action, media attention, regulatory complaints. I'm going to shine a light on every corner of Jetstream's operation until they have no choice but to change. Will you lose your job? The question caught him off guard. Maybe. Probably. But some things are more important than a job. Like me? Like you. Always like you. Zinel squeezed his hand weakly. I wanted this trip to be perfect. I wanted to prove I was grown up enough to fly alone, to have an adventure, and now everything's ruined. It's not ruined, it's postponed. When you're healed, we'll take that trip together. We'll go to London, see the tower, ride the Eye, eat fish and chips until we're sick. I promise. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but there are some police officers here who'd like to speak with Zinel. They said it's about filing charges. Ryland looked at his daughter. You up for this? She nodded, and Ryland helped her sit up straighter as two detectives entered. They introduced themselves as Detective Sarah Ortiz and Detective James Park, both from the airport division. Detective Ortiz settled into a chair across from the bed, her demeanor gentle but professional. Zinel, we've already spoken with several witnesses and reviewed the video footage. We just need to hear your version of events in your own words. Can you walk us through what happened? Zinel recounted the story, her voice steady despite the occasional tremor. She described Alara's initial approach, the accusations, the refusal to verify the ticket, the escalating confrontation. When she got to the moment Alara grabbed her, her breathing quickened. Take your time, Detective Park said kindly. She grabbed my wrist really hard. I told her to let go, but she wouldn't. She started pulling me out of the seat and I got tangled in my backpack strap. I was falling forward and she twisted my arm, backward, and then... Zinel's voice broke. Then I heard it snap. I knew immediately something was really wrong. Detective Ortiz made notes on her tablet. Did Alara say anything after you were injured? She said it was my fault, that I shouldn't have resisted. But you weren't resisting, were you? No, I just wanted her to stop hurting me. The detectives exchanged glances. Detective Park leaned forward. Zinel, based on the evidence and witness statements, we have more than enough to charge Alara Winters with assault on a minor, child endangerment, and battery. The district attorney's office will be filing charges tomorrow. You'll likely need to testify at some point, but we'll make that process as easy as possible for you. Will she go to jail? Zinel asked quietly. That's up to the courts, but she'll definitely face consequences. After the detectives left, Zinel's mother burst into the room, her face streaked with tears. She'd caught the first flight from Atlanta after Ryland called her, and the 6-hour wait had clearly shredded her nerves. My baby! She rushed to the bed, carefully embracing Zinel while avoiding the injured arm. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I should never have let you fly alone. Mom, it's not your fault either. Zinel's voice was muffled against her mother's shoulder. A mother's supposed to protect her child. I should have known. You couldn't have known, Ryland interrupted gently. None of us could have predicted this. Zinel's mother, Simone, turned to him with blazing eyes. That woman better pray she goes to jail before I get my hands on her. What kind of monster breaks a child's arm? A monster enabled by a corporation that prioritizes profit over people, Ryland said grimly. The CEO already called me, trying to buy our silence with compensation packages. I hope you told him where to shove his money. In so many words. Over the next 3 days, while Zinel recovered in the hospital, the story exploded across social media. The video from Harlan Mitchell's phone went viral, racking up millions of views. Hashtag boycott Jetstream trended worldwide. News outlets picked up the story, running segments about airline safety and discrimination. Aviation forums buzzed with pilots and flight attendants sharing their own experiences with corporate pressure to cut corners and placate profitable passengers. Jetstream stock plummeted. Customers cancelled reservations en masse. The FAA announced an investigation into the airline's crew training protocols and safety compliance. Senator Patricia Hammond, chair of the Senate Commerce Committee, called for hearings on passenger rights and airline accountability. Ryland watched it all unfold from Zinel's hospital room, his phone pinging constantly with interview requests and messages of support from fellow pilots. The union's legal team was building a case that went far beyond a single incident, pulling records that showed a pattern of complaints against cabin crew, inadequate training, and management's consistent prioritization of revenue over safety. On the fourth day, as Ryland was helping Zinel with her breakfast, his phone rang with a Washington, D.C. area code. "Captain King, this is Senator Hammond's office. The senator would like to invite you and your daughter to testify before the Senate Commerce Committee regarding the incident on Jetstream Flight 447 and broader concerns about airline safety practices." Ryland looked at Zinel, who was watching him with wide eyes. "When?" "3 weeks from today. We understand your daughter is recovering, and we're willing to accommodate any special needs she might have." The Hart Senate office building loomed like a marble monument to justice, its columns and arches designed to inspire both reverence and intimidation. Zinel stood on the steps, her casted arm in a sling decorated with stickers from well-wishers across the country. She wore a navy dress her mother had picked out, professional but still age-appropriate, and her father's hand rested protectively on her shoulder. "You ready?" Ryland asked quietly. Zinel nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. "What if I mess up? What if I cry or forget what to say?" "Then you cry. Then you take a breath and remember why we're here." He knelt down to her eye level. "You're not just speaking for yourself today. You're speaking for every kid who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere. Every passenger who's been mistreated by someone with authority. That's power, Zinel. Use it." Inside, the hearing room was packed with journalists, aviation industry representatives, and concerned citizens who'd lined up hours before dawn to secure seats. Camera crews positioned themselves along the walls, their lenses trained on the witness table where Zinel would soon sit. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and barely contained anger. Senator Hammond called the hearing to order, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "We convene today to examine systemic failures in airline safety protocols and corporate accountability. What happened to Zinel King should never happen to any passenger, let alone a child. But as our investigation has revealed, her case is not isolated. It is symptomatic of an industry that has prioritized profit margins over human dignity." She gestured toward the witness table. "Our first witness is Zinel King, the 12-year-old passenger who was assaulted aboard Jetstream Airlines Flight 447 on November 3rd. Zinel walked to the table with her father beside her, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes following her every movement. She sat in the oversized leather chair, and a clerk adjusted the microphone to her height. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the table, the cast a stark white reminder of why she was here. Senator Hammond's expression softened. "Zinel, thank you for your courage in coming here today. I know this isn't easy. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer them honestly. If you need a break at any time, just let me know. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Can you tell us what happened on the morning of November 3rd? Zinel took a shaky breath and began. She described boarding the plane with excitement, settling into seat 1A, the initial moments of wonder. Then Alara's approach, the accusations, the escalating hostility. Her voice wavered when she described showing her boarding pass and being called a liar. "She looked at me like I was trash," Zinel said quietly. "Like I had no right to exist in that space. And when I tried to explain, she just got angrier." "Did you feel threatened?" "Yes. She was so much bigger than me, and she had all the authority. When she grabbed me, I knew nobody was going to stop her. The other passengers were watching, but what could they do? She was the crew member. She was supposed to be in charge. Senator Martinez, another committee member, leaned forward. Zanel, in that moment, what did you think was happening? I thought I was going to get thrown off the plane. Or arrested. I thought everyone would believe her instead of me because she was an adult and I was just a kid. Tears welled in Zanel's eyes. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? Why is this happening? And what did you do wrong? Nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. Zanel's voice grew stronger. I had a valid ticket. I was polite. I followed every rule. But none of that mattered because she'd already decided I didn't belong there. The room was silent except for the whir of cameras and the scratch of journalists' pens on paper. Senator Hammond nodded slowly. Thank you, Zanel. That must have been incredibly difficult to relive. The next witness was Harlan Mitchell, the lawyer who'd filmed the assault. He provided additional context, describing Alara's demeanor and the shocked reactions of surrounding passengers. I've flown over 1 million miles in my career, Harlan testified. I've seen flight attendants handle genuinely disruptive passengers with professionalism and restraint. What I witnessed that day was not protocol. It was not de-escalation. It was an adult using her position of authority to brutalize a child who posed no threat whatsoever. He pulled up the video on the committee's screen, and the room watched in horrified silence as the assault played out. Several senators visibly flinched when the bone snapped. Senator Hammond's jaw tightened, and she made a note on her pad. After Harlan stepped down, Senator Hammond called the next witness. The committee calls Sage Riker, Chief Executive Officer of Jetstream Airlines. A ripple of tension moved through the room. Riker entered flanked by 3 attorneys, his expression carefully neutral. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He took his seat at the witness table with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. Senator Hammond wasted no time. Mr. Riker, were you aware that Alara Winters had multiple complaints filed against her for aggressive behavior toward passengers? Senator, I oversee an airline with over 20,000 employees. I cannot personally review every personnel file. That wasn't my question. Were you aware that Ms. Winters had documented complaints? Riker shifted slightly. I became aware of prior complaints after the incident involving Ms. King. 6 complaints over 3 years, Mr. Riker. 6 separate passengers reported hostile treatment. Why was she still employed? Our HR department follows established protocols for addressing employee conduct issues. Ms. Winters received additional training after each complaint. Senator Martinez cut in, training that clearly didn't work. Mr. Riker, what exactly is Jetstream's policy regarding crew members with repeated complaints? We have a progressive discipline system: verbal warning, written warning, suspension, termination. And where was Ms. Winters in that progression? Riker consulted with one of his attorneys before answering. She had received written warnings. So she was 1 step away from termination, yet you still assigned her to work flights. You still gave her authority over passengers, including children. Senator Martinez's voice dripped with contempt. At what point does passenger safety outweigh your desire to avoid the cost of hiring and training a replacement? Senator, we take passenger safety extremely seriously. Do you? Because your actions suggest otherwise. Senator Martinez pulled out a document. This is an internal memo from your VP of Operations dated 18 months ago. I'll read the relevant portion. Recommend deferring cabin crew hiring to Q3 to preserve margin targets. Existing staff can absorb increased workload through schedule optimization. Mr. Riker, doesn't schedule optimization mean forcing fewer crew members to work longer hours with less rest? The airline industry is highly competitive. We must balance safety with operational efficiency. There is no balance when it comes to safety. Senator Hammond's voice cracked like a whip. You don't get to treat human beings as acceptable losses in your profit calculations. Zynel King was not a margin target. She was a 12-year-old girl who trusted your airline to transport her safely. Riker's composure slipped slightly. The incident with Ms. King was tragic and unacceptable. We've taken immediate action. After it went viral, after your stock tanked, after you had no choice. Senator Hammond leaned back in her chair. Mr. Riker, I have here the transcript of your phone call to Captain King, made approximately 4 hours after his daughter was injured. Would you like me to read your exact words? Riker's attorneys conferred urgently, but he waved them off. That's not necessary. I think it is. Senator Hammond adjusted her reading glasses. Quote, incidents like this are unfortunate but complex. Crew members make thousands of judgment calls every day, and sometimes mistakes happen. Mr. Riker, you called breaking a child's arm a mistake, like forgetting to offer someone a beverage or misplacing a blanket. I misspoke in the heat of... You revealed your true priorities. You were already strategizing damage control while Zynel was in surgery. Senator Hammond set down the transcript. This committee has reviewed Jetstream's safety records, training protocols, and incident reports for the past 5 years. We've found a pattern of negligence, cost-cutting measures that compromise safety, and a corporate culture that values profit over people. Today's hearing is just the beginning. She turned to face the cameras directly. The FAA will be conducting a comprehensive audit of Jetstream Airlines operations. We are introducing legislation that will mandate stricter crew training requirements, establish independent review boards for passenger complaints, and impose severe penalties on airlines that prioritize profit over safety. This ends now. Riker attempted to respond, but Senator Hammond cut him off. You're dismissed, Mr. Riker. I suggest you spend less time with your lawyers and more time figuring out how to rebuild an airline that's safe for passengers. 3 months after the Senate hearing, Jetstream Airlines filed for bankruptcy protection. The FAA had grounded 70% of their fleet after discovering maintenance violations so egregious that several aircraft were deemed unsafe to fly. Sage Riker resigned under pressure from the board, though he walked away with a golden parachute that made Zynel's stomach turn when she saw the news. Criminal charges against him for corporate negligence were still pending, tangled in the kind of legal maneuvering that only unlimited money could buy. Ilara Winters fared worse. The criminal trial lasted 2 weeks, and the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts: assault on a minor, child endangerment, and battery. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of probation and mandatory anger management counseling. She'd also lost her flight attendant certification permanently, ensuring she'd never work in aviation again. Zynel watched the sentencing on the news with mixed feelings. Part of her felt satisfaction seeing justice delivered. Another part just felt hollow. No amount of prison time would erase what happened or undo the nightmares that still jolted her awake some nights, phantom pain screaming through her healed arm. The civil case settled differently than anyone expected. Lydia Daniels had built such a comprehensive pattern of discrimination that Jetstream's new leadership, desperate to salvage what remained of the company, agreed to a consent decree monitored by federal courts. They implemented mandatory bias training for all employees, established an independent passenger rights office, and created a compensation fund for victims of past discrimination. Zynel received $8 million in damages, money her parents immediately placed in a trust for her education and future. But the real victory came in the legislation. The Passenger Protection and Airline Accountability Act passed both houses of Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support. It mandated stricter crew training requirements, established federal oversight of airline complaint procedures, and created significant penalties for airlines that failed to address discriminatory practices. Senator Hammond called it Zynel's Law during the signing ceremony, and the president invited Zynel to watch him sign it into effect. She stood beside him in the Oval Office, her arm fully healed except for a thin white scar that traced the line where bone had broken through skin. When the president handed her the signing pen, she held it like the precious thing it was, proof that her pain had produced something meaningful. "You've changed the world, young lady," the president said, shaking her hand. Not many people can say that at 12 years old. "I'm 13 now," Zanel corrected with a small smile, "and I didn't do it alone." She looked at her father, standing proud in his dress uniform. Ryland had resigned from Jetstream before they went bankrupt, unwilling to watch the company's death throes. Other airlines had courted him immediately. His reputation as a skilled pilot and man of principle made him valuable. But he'd turned them all down. He had different plans. 6 months after the Senate hearing, Captain Ryland King stood on an empty airfield in suburban Atlanta, looking at the cluster of buildings that would become the King Aviation Academy. The property had once housed a small regional airlines training facility, complete with classrooms, flight simulators, and hangar space. Ryland had purchased it using a portion of the settlement money, with Zanel's enthusiastic approval. "It's perfect, Dad," she said, walking the tarmac beside him. The Georgia sun beat down on them and cicadas sang in the trees beyond the runway. "When can we start classes?" "Applications open next month. We've got funding for 50 scholarships in the first year, prioritizing students from underserved communities." Ryland's voice carried pride and purpose. "Kids who love aviation but never thought they could afford to pursue it. Kids who've been told they don't belong in cockpits. Kids like me. Kids exactly like you." The Academy's mission statement hung in the main building's lobby, printed in letters large enough to read from across the room. "Aviation belongs to everyone. The sky has no gates, no velvet ropes, no barriers except the ones we create. Here, we tear those barriers down." Zanel became the Academy's first student, not through nepotism, but because she'd earned it. She'd spent months studying aviation theory, practicing in simulators, learning everything she could about the machines that had once brought her such pain. Flying became her way of reclaiming power, of transforming trauma into triumph. Tara Martinez, the junior flight attendant who'd tried to help Zanel that terrible day, joined the Academy as director of student services. She'd quit Jetstream in protest after the assault, and had been searching for a way to make aviation safer and more welcoming. When Ryland offered her the position, she'd accepted immediately. "We're building something different here," Tara told the first group of scholarship students during orientation. "A place where everyone is respected, where safety and dignity aren't negotiable, where the only thing that matters is your passion for flight and your commitment to excellence. Welcome to the King Aviation Academy. Welcome home." Among those first 50 students were the children of immigrants, kids from inner cities, teenagers who'd grown up in rural poverty, young people whose dreams had been dismissed as unrealistic by teachers and guidance counselors who couldn't imagine them in cockpits. The Academy gave them simulators and textbooks, flight instructors and mentors, but most importantly, it gave them permission to believe they belonged in the sky. 1 year after the assault, on a crisp autumn morning with clouds scattered across a brilliant blue canvas, Zanel King climbed into a Cessna 172 for her first solo training flight. Her instructor, a retired Air Force pilot named Captain Sandra Williams, ran through the pre-flight checklist with her, then climbed out of the aircraft. "Remember everything we've practiced," Sandra said through the open window. "Trust your training. Trust yourself." Zanel's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the yoke. Her scar tingled. Phantom sensation or real nerve response? She couldn't tell. For a moment, she was back in seat 1A, feeling Ilara's grip on her wrist, hearing the terrible crack that had changed everything. Then she took a breath and let it go. That girl in seat 1A wasn't gone. She lived inside Zanel still, carrying her fear and pain, but she didn't get to control the story anymore. Zinel had written new chapters, ones filled with courage and purpose and sky. She radioed the tower, received clearance, and taxied to the runway. The engine's roar vibrated through her body as she advanced the throttle. The plane accelerated, faster and faster, the runway markers blurring past. She pulled back on the yoke, and the Cessna lifted into the air, wheels leaving Earth behind. Zinel King was flying. From the ground, Ryland watched his daughter's plane climb toward the scattered clouds, his heart simultaneously soaring and breaking. She circled the field once, her wings catching the morning sun, then leveled off and flew a perfect pattern. He could imagine her up there, focused and calm, hands steady on the controls, eyes scanning instruments and horizon with practiced precision. Simone stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. Our baby's flying. She's been flying since the day she was born, Ryland said quietly. We just gave her wings to match her spirit. Zinel completed her training circuit and brought the plane in for landing, touching down smooth as silk. She taxied back to the hangar where her parents waited, and when she climbed out of the cockpit, her face was radiant. I did it. She threw her good arm around her father's neck. Dad, I did it. You sure did, baby. I'm so proud of you. She pulled back, her expression suddenly serious. I kept thinking about that day, about how scared I was, how helpless I felt, and then I realized, up there, I'm not helpless. Up there, I'm in control. Nobody can take that away from me. That's right. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and transformed it into something beautiful. Ryland cupped her face in his hands. You know what real strength is, Zinel. It's not pretending you weren't hurt. It's not forgetting what happened. Real strength is carrying your scars and flying anyway. Over the following years, the King Aviation Academy became a model for inclusive aviation training. Graduates went on to fly for major airlines, join military aviation programs, work as flight instructors and air traffic controllers. They carried with them the Academy's ethos, that excellence and compassion weren't mutually exclusive, that authority should never become cruelty, that the sky was vast enough for everyone. Zinel became the face of a generation that refused to accept "that's just how things are" as an answer. She spoke at aviation conferences and civil rights symposiums, sharing her story not for sympathy but as a catalyst for change. She testified before Congress twice more, advocating for expanded youth aviation programs and stronger protections for young travelers. On her 16th birthday, she earned her private pilot's license. On her 18th, she was accepted to every aviation university she applied to. And on the 5-year anniversary of the assault, she flew a small plane to Washington, D.C., and landed at a private airfield where Senator Hammond was waiting. I wanted to thank you in person, Zinel said as they walked toward the terminal, for believing me, for fighting for me, for turning my pain into policy. Senator Hammond smiled, older now, but still fierce. You did the hard part, Zinel. You stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. You demanded justice when others would have taken the money and moved on. That kind of courage changes the world. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. The nightmares, the therapy, the years of legal battles. Zinel looked up at the sky, where a commercial jet traced a white line through blue. Then I meet a kid at the academy who tells me they thought aviation wasn't for people like them until they heard my story, and I know it was worth every second. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching planes take off and land, each one carrying passengers who were safer because a 12-year-old girl had refused to be silent about injustice. What's next for you? Hammond asked. Zinel's smile was pure sunshine. College? Then flight instructor certification. Eventually I want to fly for a major airline, and I want to be the kind of captain who makes every passenger feel like they belong, no matter who they are or where they sit. The industry needs people like you. The world needs people who've been broken and chose to heal instead of staying bitter. Zenel touched the scar on her arm, barely visible now under her jacket sleeve. Pain can destroy you or define you. I chose to let it refine me. As the sun set over the airfield, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zenel King returned to her plane. She conducted her pre-flight check with meticulous care, climbed into the cockpit, and radioed for clearance. The tower controller's voice crackled through her headset, granting permission to depart. Zenel advanced the throttle, and the plane surged forward. The runway fell away beneath her, and she climbed into the sunset, rising higher and higher until the ground became a patchwork quilt of lights against the gathering darkness. Up here, she was free. Up here, the only limits were the ones she set for herself. Up here, she wasn't a victim or a symbol or a cautionary tale. She was simply Zenel King, pilot, dreamer, survivor, warrior, a girl who'd been told she didn't belong and had responded by claiming the entire sky as her birthright. She leveled off at cruising altitude and set her course for home, where her father would be waiting at the Academy's airfield, watching the sky for her return. Behind her, the sun dipped below the horizon. Ahead, stars began to emerge, infinite points of light guiding her forward. Sometimes you have to break to rebuild, she thought, remembering the words she'd spoken at her first press conference. But when you do, you soar higher than before. Zenel King was soaring now, and nothing would ever bring her down again. As Zenel takes flight, remember that she's not just flying for herself. She's flying for all the people who told her she didn't belong. If you believe in the power of second chances, resilience, and breaking through barriers, let us know by leaving a comment and hitting that subscribe button. You won't want to miss where this journey takes her next.